Thank you. Come now to question number 8 in the name of Debbie Naruwa-Paka.
Tēnā koe, Te Pika. My question is to the Acting Prime Minister. Does he stand by all his government statements and policies?
In the same way as we answered for question 2 and 3, and again on question 8.
How can he stand by his decision to use parliamentary urgency to push through legislation that will increase unemployment and insecure working conditions while reducing wages when people are trying to survive a cost of living crisis and put more kai on the table for Christmas?
Because none of those statements in that so-called question are true, but they are relevant to the inheritance that this government is sadly having to deal with now and desperately before Christmas. And so if they'd have paid more attention to the economy rather than their woke, idiotic left-wing ideals, the workers of this country would have done far better. But it's been my observation that the Greens, the economies that they admire, are all in the third world.
Point of order through you, please, Te Pika.
Point of order, Debbie Naruwa-Paka.
There are a couple of ones I could bring in, perhaps 121, personal reflections or relevance to debate 112. I'll leave that up to you, please.
Yes, I know, but I could also rule out your first supplementary because it had suppositions in it. So we do try and get a degree of flow if at all possible. But if you just restate your concerns there, because I didn't quite pick up the first one.
I think my concerns are that the question for the Deputy Prime Minister wasn't asked, and we also take exception with reference to woke. Those are personal reflections and they don't belong in this House. Ko toku whakaaro.
Yes, there's an awful lot of things happen in this House that don't really belong here. So I think we might just let that one slide. Do you have another supplementary at all?
Yes, I do. Thank you.
Thank you.
What is his justification for repealing fair pay agreements and reducing the wages and conditions of Maori, Pacifica, young people and women, as highlighted by his own government's leaked cabinet paper?
Well, first of all, the integrity of the person answering this question on the subject of incomes and wages is that threshold was set in the previous government, not by Labour or the Greens, but by New Zealand First. And we want the working class of this country to get fairly paid, but we want a thing called productivity, and we know it's only based on, it's not nonsense, it's totally true, and I can prove it. I can go back to 2017 and prove that categorically. We know what they campaigned on, so don't come here today and try and tell us what you couldn't do. And at the end of the last 3 years, the workers of this country were dramatically left down by a failed economy, and our job is to turn that around. And when we do so, we'll uplift the wages of everybody in this country.
Supplementary. Why is this government planning to bring back 90-day trials which will disproportionately punish tangata whenua, particularly rangatahi, trying to get their foot in the door of the job market, when the research commissioned by the Treasury in 2016 found no evidence that trial periods increase firms' overall hiring, but instead just make it easier for firms to sack people without cause and with fewer dismissal costs?
The fact is, if anyone understands economics, a willing business and a willing worker are critical to employment. And so whether it's 1 month, 3 months or 1 month or 2 months or 3 months, the fact of the matter is that the sound connection of those two will work. However, it is our intention as a government, to the moment someone's no longer in work, to be on their case to get them back into work. And so the consequences that member's talking about simply will not happen.
Honourable Grant Robertson.
Members' pride in the minimum wage level. Can he tell the House what the minimum wage is today?
233? 2270? 2270? Am I right? Yeah, no, I didn't ask him. No, I was telling him. No, I said 2270, knowing that I'd have an affirmation on my right from the Minister of Finance and the Leader of the House. Over here, we consult before we open our mouth. True.
Rawiri Waitihi.
He aha tō whakautu. Ki ngā rōpū, e mahi ana, mo ngā tamariki rawa kore, e karanga ana, kia heke te whika o ngā tamariki rawa kore, mā te pene, mā te hiki I te whiwhinga pūtea, mā te ngāwari I te hokokai me te māwiwi ārai.
Is the member going to translate that, or does he want to give the Minister a moment to receive that translation?
A point of order, Mr. Speaker.
No, it's only a question. It wasn't any kind of a direction.
Absolutely not.
Okay. You want to answer that or not?
You can tell me in English or you can...
Well, the question doesn't need to be answered if the Minister doesn't, or Prime Minister in this case, doesn't feel like he wants to answer it. So does the Minister want to have another
supplementary?
Mr. Speaker, a question, I mean, I guess strictly speaking, your ruling is in order, but the practice in the time I've been in the House is that that is only done when a question is definitively out of order. We have a simultaneous translation system in the House to allow for members to answer. I wonder whether the right course of action here might be for Mr Waititi to repeat the question and the Acting Prime Minister to use his earpiece for the translation.
Speaking the point of order. We've got a question. Answer the question.
I just wish that the courtesy of the House would apply, so the person asking the question, Mr Speaker, point of order, so the person asking the question also had the comfort that the people who are watching on television also are part of this parliamentary debate. That's what a democracy is called. It's not about just about 5%, it's about the other 95% who pay as well. It's called one people, one country. Now back to my point. If the member's concerned about the cost of living, no. On the marae, Megan, you keep quiet. Right? You do. Willie knows that. He keeps quiet too. You don't shout out like some bunch of clowns at university.
Yeah, just hang on. Yeah.
And that member has asked a question, he deserves an answer, and I'll give it to him. If the member's concerned about the cost of living, then that is the greatest concern of this government as well. We went at the last election, it was a massive issue. And just behind it was crime and lawlessness, and Maori gangs by the same way. But the cost of living can only be addressed by dealing with the causes of it, and the causes of it are number one, centre, and the focus of this government going forward.
Point of order, Madam Davis.
Was that a point of order?
No, that was an answer. He
raised a point of order.
I'm sorry. He made it... Sorry, hang on. The Acting Prime Minister made it very clear when I called him on a point of order, he said, no, it is an answer. And that's how we progressed. Debbie Naruma-Packer.
Kia ora, point of order. With respect to the House and to everyone watching, can we please seek clarity from the Speaker? Are our questions in Te Reo no longer going to be answered by ministers if they choose not to use the interpreter? That's a really important subject that we're looking for clarity, please.
I can't answer that question for ministers. The provision is made here for the translation. A minister decides whether or not an answer can be given, and there are very clear outlines and standing orders as to how they might make that decision.
Point of order. The questions were for the Deputy Prime Minister. So I respect that ministers may choose to do what they want to, but this is a question that would have gone to the Prime Minister who isn't here. So can I seek clarity again? Is it the Deputy Prime Minister, the Prime Minister or the government that's making this decision before us today? Because it is a big decision.
No, it's not. It's straightforward. All ministers are part of the government, including the Prime Minister, whether they're Acting Prime Minister, Deputy Prime Minister or a Minister. And it is under the standing orders very clear how they may or may not answer a question. A point of order, Christopher Bishop.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think, in fairness to the members asking the questions, sometimes the contemporaneous translation service doesn't quite keep up with the asking of the question. So, if I could say to members who wish to use Te Reo when asking questions, if they could perhaps indicate they're about to do so, so that ministers and government respondents can get the translation device, the hearing equipment, so the earpiece, so that they can actually listen to the question as it's being asked. That will also help the translator do their job as well, so that we can have the expeditious exchange rather than what we just had.
Next in line was Malama Davidson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. genuine and important conversation happening right here. Are we to believe then it simply becomes a choice for a minister to not answer a question, given that te reo is an official language, similarly to New Zealand's signed language? I understand the point that Mr Bishop is trying to make, that yes, I'd too be open to the person asking the question to repeat the question so that we all have time to pick up our translators, agree. But are we to understand that it is simply a choice not to ask a question that is asked in an official language of this country?
No, I think the member confuses two things. One is there's no question that te reo is an official language in this country. The fact that it is not a language that is shared with any fluency by a large number of members of the House is neither here nor there. The use of it is permitted. When it comes to the answer of a question, it's nothing new in this. It has always been the case. In fact, Speaker's ruling 1994 makes it very clear the parameters for ministers able to decide not to answer a question. The Honourable Kira McAnulty.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The concern I have here is, you're quite right to point out 1994, but also 1993 says that where a question is clear, there's an expectation that ministers answer it. It's unfortunate how this has played out, however, where there was the words point of order used. It's been ruled that it was a comment, but nevertheless, the response that was part of that suggested that that minister, perhaps others, will not answer questions if they are asked in te reo. Now, I'm not sure that it's useful to continue that, so I wonder if you would reflect on it, perhaps watch over it again, because it would be an unfortunate reflection on the House if that was what's suggested, backed up by the suggestion that ministers don't have to answer. We shouldn't go down that track.
I take the member's point on board and will in fact reflect a little further on it. It's one of the penances you do in this job, is reflecting on these things, so I'll go ahead with that and come up with whatever it might be. The Honourable Shane Jones, point of order.
Just following on from the Speaker who's resumed his seat, Mr Speaker, the reality is that there was a slight delay in the translation, reflective of the rudimentary nature of the Maori language and my ability to make it sound more sophisticated in English.
Well, I'm sure that's a wonderful piece of...
It is.
I'm talking about this one.
Speaking to it?
Yeah, I was just congratulating on myself. Congratulations inside of a point of order. It's quite remarkable. Honourable Kira McAnulty.
Thank you, and I thank the Minister for his contribution. However, the issue arose also from the suggestion from the Honourable Grant Robertson that Rawari Waititi be given the opportunity to repeat the question, that all members in the House therefore would have notice and would be able to listen to the translation. However, the response was that ministers don't need to provide an answer, and now we are where we are.
No, there was two parts to the point, so I answered the first part. If that is if the member wants to ask the question again, then I think we can progress by doing so.
Point of order.
Point of order.
With respect, Etapika. Just again to seek clarity from this party's perspective and the 70% of our population who are under the age of 40 who kōrero te reo Māori, if we need to bring about a different practice, because this is a practice that we've had since we came in 3 years ago, Te Ururoa had, that we've had Te Pāti Māori enjoy and other members across the House. Is the decision today, and it may need to go out for reflection for the Business Committee, that we need to indicate when we're transferring language, or is there going to be a different set of protocols applied around our
No, that's
reo?
not a decision that's been made here at all. I've said that I'll reflect on how we might make things work more smoothly, because you might notice that most of the people in this House are not reflective of that 17% in age, if nothing else. And so if we are to get answers to questions, we need to have something that works, and that's certainly my desire. Marama Davidson, last point of order on this matter.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. It's just in relation to 1993, Speaker's rulings. Yep. It's very clear that where the question is clear, there is an expectation that ministers will answer it unless they consider it not to be in the public interest to do so. So I'm just seeking clarification on whether it is not in the public interest, or what is the ruling that you are calling to allow ministers to have that choice?
So the ruling stands, but it's not for the Speaker to determine the interpretation of that ruling. So now, do we have another supplementary on this question? Rauri Waititi.
Just for clarification, Mr Speaker, and your guidance, is it a repeat of the first question, or are you saying that I have to move on to the next question?
No, look, I'll tell you what, you make the choice. Is that okay? Sorry, because you're going to ask the first question again if you want, and that won't cost you your supplements, subsequent supplementaries.
Okay. Yeah. First supplementary question. He aha tō whakautu, ki ngā rōpū e mahi ana o ngā tamariki rawa kore, e karanga ana ki heke te whika o ngā tamariki rawa kore, mā te pēne, mā te hiki i te whiwhinga pūtea, mā te ngāwari i te hoko kai, me te māwiwi ārai.
If we're going to help all those people who are working with the poor, then the first thing we should do is uplift our economy and leave no one out. And that is the purpose and the focus of this government, that with the reforms that are going to go ahead, running a far more successful economy and ensuring that no one is left out in housing, education and in health and in terms of infrastructural access, then people will be uplifted. Not like the disaster we had, where there were all those tens and tens and tens of thousands utterly forgotten, and the homeless went up by 35%.
Rauri Waititi.
He aha ngā kaupapa here o tēnei kāwana. Mō te hiki i te whiwhinga pūtea, kia ngāwari te utu i ngā pire, te kai me te penehini i mua i te krihimete.
Well, the first thing that's going to happen is that in parts of the economy, the cost of petrol are going to go down because the unfair charging that was imposed by a previous government for no purpose while roading was a mess. Well, you are going to hold us to that because you won't have to hold us to that because unlike that member, we keep our promises. We don't just make them and break them one after the other, we keep them. So those pricing should go down. Depends, of course, on all the international circumstances of supply chains to this country. And whilst I'm at it, they left this country's fuel supply in a desperate circumstance when they wound back Marsden Point. We could be closed down within 3 days because of their short-sightedness, and Megan Woods is the person who never enacted in the national interest, just allowed the refinery, so critical to this country in an emergency, not to be operating any longer. And on the bigger question of cost of living before Christmas, well, there's only 2 weeks to go. We're going to do the best we can to signal to the market and through the Groceries Commissioner a fairer pricing regime going forward.